the number one commodity currently being stolen is food and beverage. So think about like even like water bottles, a load full of water bottles. I mean, but they're able to quickly turn that because they can just go to a mom and pop grocery and say, hey, I'll give this to you for X. Or like I've even seen like on Facebook where it's like you can buy a pallet of water, pallet of Gatorade for $50. And you're like, oh, what a great deal. And as a consumer, you're like, oh, they said this was just like one thing was damaged and that's why it's like this. No, that's probably stolen freight.
You've been like on the convention trail, I saw.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you taking the time to hop on here with me today.
Yes.
We actually have so much in common. When you reached out to me, I was like we're very similar. So
Yeah.
we both do podcasts. We're both in, transportation, trucking, logistics. We both have created some female empowerment like groups within our industries. And I just feel like we're kind of on the same wavelength as far as what we're doing to protect, trucking and freight in our country.
Yeah. I was going to say, no, whenever I saw your profile, I think you like commented on somebody's something and I'm like, who is this?
Yeah.
I clicked on it. I'm like,
Yeah.
are we the same person? Like, this is so weird. But yeah, we're definitely so much alike. It's really cool. And there's not that many of us like us out there that are advocating for women and wanting women to like have a voice and stuff. So it's cool to like meet somebody else that's just as passionate. So
100%. And I love that you are the fraud girl and you have this like alter ego, this cartoon, this superhero, because I've kind of branded myself as the legacy defender. And, similarly, I feel like I'm a superhero in my industry. I believe in the work we're doing. I believe in the industry we're protecting. I believe it's a matter of national security these days. If our industry stopped, I think the people in our country would go crazy in about 3 days and melt down. And so there aren't a lot of women traditionally in our industries, but I think that's changing. We're trying to change that and make an impact.
Yeah.
So why don't you just kind of take me back? How did you? I know you were a broker for 8 years, and now I know you work with GenLogs, which the GenLogs technology I'm fascinated.
So cool.
I totally want to talk about that. But how did you get started? Where did Fraud Girl come from?
So yeah, prior to even being a broker, I was actually in a call center for whatever. And the reason, like most brokers, you kind of fall into it. Like I had somebody that's like, do you want to make more money? And I'm like, sure. And then that's how I started to become a broker. Meanwhile, I didn't know I wouldn't sleep and it would be like mayhem the whole time. But it was such a fun job to have. And like every day was different. I loved it. Then being able to go on the tech side, part of me being a broker was I dealt with all high value freight. So I did like copper, electrical wire. That was like my jam. And so luckily my boss was super stringent on our carrier vetting. So we had very low thefts, but then we started to see an uptick like after 2020, just kind of like everybody else did. And so we had to become like more and more strict on things. We then purchased a onboarding platform called My Care Portal, which then I ended up working for. And so it was cool being a user and then going on to the tech side, because then I was able to say like, hey, as a user and like what you experience day to day is this, and this is the things that we need as a broker to make our lives easier. So I got to have like a ton of impact on the product and the messaging and getting like, education out there, which is kind of my biggest things is education. And so because of that, and they would just throw me up on stage like, you know what you're talking about, get out there. It's just a bunch of brokers you're talking to. And I'm like, okay. And so I'd get out there and then I started being called Fraud Girl. And they're like, yeah, that's the girl that talks about fraud. And then it evolved into Fraud Girl. And then one time I actually met with Nate Johnson. I was on his podcast and I was like, yeah, everybody keeps calling me Fraud Girl. It's kind of weird. He's like, you need like a superhero shirt and like, you need this whole thing. I'm like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. Yeah. And then he shows up the next conference with this whole like, the whole brand kit, basically. Like he built the whole brand for me. And so I was like, you know what, this is so cool. And I ran with it. So it's been really cool being that superhero, but really being able to like use that as like a education for the masses. Cause I think it is talked about a lot now. It's a lot of buzzword, but it's not talked about in like how do you actually implement? It's more of like, hey, this is what's happening. And everyone's like, yeah, we know, we're living it, but what do I do about it? So that's kind of been my stance on there.
Golly. Yeah, I work quite a bit on cyber awareness, and I do just a ton of free security awareness training. I'm very active on social medias. I do all different kinds of lunch and learns, speak at conventions too, just trying to get the word out there. Not, obviously, like you said, people know what's happening.
Yeah.
but how do we prevent it? Where are the blind spots, and what can we do to shore up those security gaps and really help prevent these, bad actors from, stealing things and breaching companies? You handle the asset side of things, the trucks more.
Mm-hmm.
I handle the enterprise side of the company. So it's kind of cool how, once again, we have these
Yeah.
parallels between our jobs and what we do. I've seen some of your educational, things on LinkedIn and your podcasts that you do. I love, kind of how you send them through a school, is it called? 101, let's just talk through this, and
Yeah.
classes in session. I see that and I love that. So tell me, when we do our risk assessments, that's kind of what we focus on at IT Architects. We do risk assessments, and we find these common blind spots, these ways that constantly criminals are getting in. And whether that
Mm-hmm.
is, a weak password or a reused password for us, or, backups that haven't really been tested, or maybe somebody has an incident response plan, but they've never really practiced it. It's just kind of a pile of paperwork. It's sitting in a folder somewhere. So let's talk about cyber-enabled cargo theft and freight fraud. That's your area of expertise. So when I think about cyber-enabled cargo theft, it's still just stealing freight, but they're not breaking into the trucks and popping a lock on the back. They're using a cyber tactic to get in. What does that look like from your side?
Yeah, 100%. And what's interesting is I actually met with the FBI. I think it's been about a month ago now, and they were saying the majority of the cargo thefts that they're getting reported, other than straight theft, more of like the strategic type thefts, majority of the ones that they're seeing starts with some sort of cyber activity. Either they are doing the
Okay.
phishing attempts like you're talking about, and they're like impersonating
Yep.
that carrier, or they're even
Mhm.
just whenever they're purchasing an MC, they're posing as somebody that they're not online. And so it's
Right.
something online and not having that personal relationship part of like knowing the guy who you're talking to on the other side. So definitely it starts that way. And we'll just even take like a phishing attempt, or like an RMM type situation where that happens way more often than I even knew, I guess. And especially after talking to the FBI, where a
Mhm.
carrier, like let's say like a bad actor or something, sends something to a brokerage, or I will talk about vice versa too, but they'll send like, hey, here's my POD, or hey, here's my insurance certificate. They click on the link doesn't open anything. And they're like, what are you talking about? This doesn't even open, resend. Right. Meanwhile, it's, downloading something on their computer to be able to like mirror their whole screen. Most of the time when something happens, they're just living there. Like, I don't know how I'm envisioning these guys having like all these different things on the walls, but I highly doubt they're that sophisticated. But really what they're doing though is they're waiting for you to accept as a broker, like, hey, I this now the shipper is like, hey, you're going to have a load of diamonds. No, I don't know, something, right? Here's a high
Mhm.
value load. And they see, and they're like, oh man, I want that. They get the pickup number through just living on the computer. They see everything. They even see what
Yeah.
carrier you book it with. A lot of times then they'll go back and then even pretend they're the broker confirming with the carrier, but then rerouting them. So it is the legitimate carrier that shows up to the shipper, which makes it super hard for the shipper because they're vetting everything correctly. Like everything is, the broker's doing everything right, the shipper's doing everything right. Meanwhile, though, that bad actor is living as that broker and then redirects the driver. So I think that's another
Mhm.
step that we have done a very poor job at doing in the industry, is educating drivers what to do when there is a redirect, or there is a blind shipment, or there's something that seems off. Most of the time when a theft happens and you talk to the driver who wasn't involved, they're like, yeah, it did feel weird. You're like, yeah, I wish you would have called me. But they
Yeah.
don't know what to do when that happens. And they've also, kind of have a bad relationship with brokers or the shipper. Like they're kind of not seen as like somebody where if they were to say, hey, this kind of feels off, you'd be like, oh, you're fine, just keep driving. Right. And so I think
Mm.
drivers have been so, I guess, pushed down on their own thoughts that we need to
Yeah.
kind of bring that back up. And also as a broker, like if you get a phone call like that, that should be like freaking sirens going off, red alert. Oh my
Red
God.
flags.
Right. And there's so many
Yeah.
brokers that get those type of calls and they're like, oh, he just doesn't know what he's talking about. And you're like, no, dude, you've been infiltrated. So yeah, that's like an example of what could happen.
Yeah, vendor vetting is so important, even on the enterprise side. I know both of us work with the NMFTA. We're part of the Freight Fraud Prevention
Mm-hmm.
Hub. I love what the NMFTA is doing, like
Yep.
bringing who would typically be a competitor together and help collaborate as an industry, because we know that the bad guys are ganged up against us.
Right.
So I love the collaboration within our industry and really vetting your vendors. we use their vendor vetting framework all the time. I send that to my clients. I'm like, first of all, do you know who has access to your system? Do you know who your vendors are? Do you have a list of your vendors? Number two, have you had any type of security conversation with them at all? Have you asked them any questions? Do you know what their security posture is? And most of the time that hasn't happened. So it's something I think we've got, it's part of the cost of doing business now. You have to vet your vendors. But also something you hit on was, trusting your gut.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for a while. If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not.
Right.
And that's where I think independent validation is so important. You can't just trust the email that came through. You can, I would say never trust an email that comes through, but you can't even just trust, phone numbers because they're spoofing that stuff. You've got to independently pick up that phone, validate, whatever it is, whether it's from the asset side or from the enterprise side, you've got to independently validate. And just going back to vetting your vendors and having those relationships, knowing who you're doing business with. Yeah. I think that's so important. That was a really good point.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, with the vendor part, I mean, it was interesting to me, especially like, let's say like ELD companies, right? Like they are self-validated, whatever, through the FMCSA. And that's just been like, like the exposure that's come out. And like, shout out to Danielle Chafin. She taught me a lot of the stuff, but the stuff that we've been noticing as an industry where it's like, oh, it's like these same mom and pop, I say that, but small ELD companies that are resetting hours and their locations are getting spoofed and all these weird things are happening with ELDs. And we thought that was so safe. Like we were so safe on a technology when really we didn't understand the vendor. So that's like one thing on the carrier side, but then on the brokerage side, let's say like a TMS, everything lives in your TMS. If you don't know who, like the pressure tests that they go through, all it takes is for like me as a tech vendor to click on the wrong link and them get into my computer and then they can get into your TMS stuff. So it's like, how is your data being stored? How is access being handled? That pressure testing, like you said, I don't think that's ever talked about other than like an NMFTA or those, those gurus out there that talk about it. But for the most part, like an average broker or an average carrier, like I would say I know nothing about tech like that. So like this has been a whole new learning curve for me because it's kind of like almost a scary thing where you're like, I don't know what questions to ask, or I don't even know if they were to give me an answer. I'm like, cool, and write it down. And like, what do I do with that answer? So I think it's great that you're out there, actually saying, what do you do with the information?
Yeah. Just because you outsource your technology to a vendor does not mean you've outsourced your risk or your liability, because they're responsible for the infrastructure, but you're still responsible for how they your data, who accesses your data, how much of it they can access. And you said something earlier about how they get in and they live off the land and they're there and they're watching and they're doing reconnaissance work and they're gathering information. And we've seen criminals sit in a system for over a year, just gathering information until it was valuable enough that they would then sell it to sometimes a second criminal gang who then would specialize in something like ransomware. They would drop the payload. And then, after we have our forensics investigation, we find out they've been in their system for months and months and months and months. It's just wild how they, and that's how they impersonate so well, and that's how they can, issue all those, fake bills of ladings and, all the different things that they do that, they're impersonating legitimate carriers. And, the carriers end up the drivers who are delivering the loads don't really know that they're part of, something criminal or that they've been hired by a bad actor. They just think they're doing their job.
Right. And I think it's important to say too, like carriers and those drivers that happen to be involved with this and that they don't know it. I mean, they're getting screwed too. Like they don't get paid on that load, right? So it's like whatever money that they thought they were going to be making from that day or from that load, they don't, there's no way these guys are like, oh yeah, well, thanks for stealing the shipment, but here's your payment for running this lane from A to B. Like that just doesn't happen. And then what recourse do they have? Really nothing. But that hasn't been talked about enough either, because it is maybe like $1,000 versus $100,000 of the load. So I think it's important to know like that the driver education and the carrier education is just as important as the broker education too, because they are the front lines of defense, really. Like they are the ones that are say like, hey, this is a, redirect. Like, how do I verify a redirect? Okay, well, let's educate on how you do that. So,
yeah. I always say people are, they're undoubtedly your greatest asset.
Mm-hmm.
Most people they're hard workers. They want to do their job. They want to do it as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible. And it's all of those things that make somebody a good employee
Right.
that also make them a target, because we're humans and the criminals take advantage of that sense of urgency. And I know, especially in your side of the industry, what I'm learning is that things happen so fast. Shipments change, rates change. It's I listen to Chris Jolly a lot on the Freight Coach every day, and just how he breaks down the different, where different lanes are going. And the way the rates change, like within 15 minutes, like rates can be different, and depending on the days of the week, and like all of this is kind of new to me. I've only been in trucking and cybersecurity for a couple of years, but it's that fast-paced nature of our business that makes us such a prime target for criminals, because they can just get in and take advantage of that, especially when they've been in a system watching everything and monitoring and know exactly how to imitate the communication between the different channels.
Yeah, 100%.
It's wild.
It's definitely wild. One thing that's interesting, kind of what you brought up, is like most people are good, right? Like I would say, like for a while I was thinking like there's so many bad actors in the world. Like how in the world are this many bad people? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what was interesting is I was just at the Freight Waves conference, and Overhaul did a segment where they were talking about basically like they're saying 15,000 drivers are actually drivers that are being almost like held hostage by these bad organization rings, but they're like saying like, hey, like kidnapping family members and saying like, you need to commit these type of crimes or operate being a driver in this way in order to keep their family safe or themselves safe. So like, because to me, I'm like, how's there this many drivers that are bad? Because I know drivers and most of them want to do the right thing. And I guess you don't meet a bad driver, but yeah. So it was interesting to me to think of it like in that perspective, where it's like, it's not just like a guy that wakes up and is like, I'm going to be bad. No, a lot of times he's bad. It's just like they do with like drug mules, right? Like it's the same thing. They're they're forcing these guys to do things that they don't want to do, but they need this clean looking actor to, impersonate whatever they want and just totally control them. So it's scary, honestly.
That is scary. That's wild to me. I always think of truck drivers as heroes. I was the little girl, I probably dating myself, but you'd drive down the road and there'd be a truck and you'd, get them to honk their horn and they'd honk back. And, they were like the tough, rugged, heroes of the country. My uncle was an owner operator, and I can remember my family telling stories about, their adventures and the long hauls. And there was just such freedom and such pride back then in the job that they did. And now, to hear you tell that side of it, that's terrible.
Yeah, it's really sad.
Okay. So let's talk about GenLogs and like the camera technology. And I read some statistic, I don't know if it's right, but you guys take like, is it 15 million pictures per day? Like this is just insane to me, but I'm fascinated by it. So tell us how it works.
Yeah. First of all, like nerd out every day. I'm so excited to be working with this company. It's so cool. But so basically we have cameras all throughout the US. And the cameras it's almost like similar to like, it's our own cameras, but like we like lease like a spot of land or whatever. So like similar to like what a billboard does, or, leasing a spot of land on whatever along an interstate. So that's where we kind of put up our cameras, and strategically we have them kind of where most drivers like enter or exit areas type thing. So it's mainly interstates and highways. Some cities we're into, but basically we're watching only truck and trailer, and really anything that has like a DOT or MC on the side. That's like who we're watching. Everything else. So like you driving down the road, I would never I was like, can we track my kids, making sure they're going the right direction? And they're like, no, we
have 3 teenagers. That'd be great.
I know. But no, the AI. So prior to it even hitting our system, the embedded AI thing that we have is like where it just deletes those stuff. So we don't even see them. There's no way I could even try to see it. I think that's, cool to know that like it's not full surveillance of the whole world. But anyways, we take these pictures, trucks and trailers. Mainly we focus on like license plate, the DOT, MC, the truck number, the trailer number, the logos, the type of trucks. And so we use that for a ton of different reasons. But one thing that like I love the most is the cargo theft part. So if something does happen, and I get people messaging me all the time, it's sad how many messages I get, but I can look up and say like, hey, because what's interesting, like maybe let's say like a chameleon carrier where they flop up a tag on the side. Well, if I have
Right?
maybe like I have the license plate number, I can look up that license plate number and say like, hey, this guy is actually posing as these 5 other trucks, right? Or these 5 other DOTs. So then maybe that gives the law enforcement more tools to be able to actually find these guys. Or like, hey, we just saw this guy in Missouri. Like, let's contact. Like, we have contacts with the FBI, and like, let's call them and try to get something done. So cargo theft wise is super cool, but we also use that same information for finding capacity. So finding those drivers that maybe aren't on load boards, but we see them go from A to B, and kind of being able to build those relationships. So and then also on the shipper side too, like what shippers are running what lanes. So it's really cool being able to be a part of like really forward thinking and kind of getting out of like the digital world of vetting and getting into like physical, like these are physical proof, like the facts of the world, not just like,
Yeah.
oh, this, like I was saying, like ELDs are getting manipulated. So it's like not just whatever somebody wants you to think online. It's like, no, this is actually what's happening. So like I said, I nerd out every day. It's so cool.
That's amazing. So a truck, you can look at either the license plate or you can look at the DOT numbers and the MC numbers on the side.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with, you mentioned something called chameleon carriers, which I've been learning about, which is where they can actually, they have printers in their truck, from what I understand. They tape new numbers to the side of their truck. So that's their, like you said, one truck license plate number could be posing as many different trucks with different DOT numbers. And your cameras are able to track that and spot those. And so when a load goes missing, you're able to work with law enforcement or the FBI to say this is the last place we saw that truck, or is that how does that work?
Yeah, we actually have so it's a free service that we do. We have an investigation team. So if anybody does have a cargo theft that happened, go to genlogs.io. It's like a asset locator, find my assets or something like that says, and you click on that. We have a full investigation team. So they run a kind of report on anything and everything we've seen on that truck, whether it was like a year ago, because you never know what's like relevant information, right? Like what all have we seen on this truck? And so then we provide you kind of like a file pack. So either if you're working, typically people are filing a report with like a small agency that we may not be working with, but we at least give that, broker, shipper, whoever, the information to be able to provide that to whoever. Or if we work directly with like a cargo theft unit or like I said, FBI, we can also we communicate with them to say like, hey, we've seen this and tie this to this police number. So we've recovered, last statistic I heard was like 5,000 trailers within like we've been in the business 3 years. So, I mean, that's insane if you think about it.
That is. And is it still just high value stuff? Because I've heard now that even just what's a quick flip? What can they get back into the market quickly? So it's not just, the expensive tequila and the copper and those, it could be anything that they're able to turn around and get back into the marketplace quickly. Is that true?
Yeah. Number one commodity currently being stolen is food and beverage. So think about like, even like I heard water bottles, a load full of water bottles. I mean, but they're able to quickly turn that because they can just go to a mom and pop grocery and say, hey, I'll give this to you for X. Or like I've even seen like on Facebook where it's like, you can buy a pallet of water, a pallet of Gatorade for $50 and you're like, oh, what a great deal. And as a consumer, you're like, oh, they said this was just like a damaged, one thing was damaged. And that's why it's like this. No, that's probably stolen freight. I've never seen it be legitimate, but that's me.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, like when we're doing our risk audits, we run across very common security gaps, how criminals are getting in. Do you see also similar ways? I mean, I know you said that they can, they steal credentials, they trick a person, social engineering, they get in through human means. I mean, humans, we're the weakest link and the strongest asset at the same time. So they trick a human through social engineering, they get their password, their credentials, they log in, they pretend to be. What are the red flags? What should somebody, other than, trusting your gut, something's off, always trust your gut. But what are some of the things on the asset side that people can do? What would be your top tips?
For assets, as far as like a driver, what things that they should be looking for is any type of redirect or any type of like blind shipment or anything where it's like too good to be true being paid or something like that. So like as a driver or an asset company, that's some red flags that you should be looking for. On the brokerage side, the big or brokerage or shipper side, whenever you're talking to a carrier, the biggest, I think the number one thing is knowing that carrier's footprint. So if it is somebody impersonating, if this carrier, like I just had a thing I worked the other day where it was like a carrier was like we've only seen them either tracking, with my care portal, they had like the macro point tracking pieces. So like tracking pieces were only in Miami. We've only seen them at GenLogs, only seen them in Miami, and specifically running drayage. That's all that they ran is containers.
Okay.
And so this load that was stolen was that same carrier posing as that carrier, picking up in the Northeast a load of seafood. So like a reefer unit. Never seen them with a reefer unit equipment ever. Never seen them even outside of Florida, let alone Miami. So like it didn't make sense with their history and the make of that carrier. So whenever it comes to like somebody posing as them, typically that's like your first, I guess, if you're seeing something not adding up with like that physical footprint versus what's actually they're asking for, that's kind of flag number one. So I guess that's probably my biggest tip is like kind of seeing that. But then, like you said, taking back that human element, make that phone call that FMCSA phone number, and not just say, hey, does so-and-so, dispatcher work there or broker work there? Actually say like, hey, I'm running this lane and this is my truck information that I was given. Does all this add up? Am I in your system? That type of thing. Instead of just saying like, does this person work there? Because yeah, they work there. They're in their email. But does that broker or carrier know about that specific load?
That's so interesting. I think that, as AI becomes more part of the picture, everybody wants to do things more efficiently, but I constantly go back to the human element. There are things that AI can't do, and all the things that you're mentioning are they're intuitive things that only a human might pick up on. Does this make sense? Is this normal? Is this out of the ordinary? So even though I love AI, I think it's always going to be our thought partner. We're still, as humans, got to be the thought leader and have got to oversee whatever information we're getting, from the AI.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with that. I think AI is great and there to enhance, but it should never replace actual humans.
Yes, I agree. Tell me about Women in Logistics, this group. First of all, I want to give you a shout out. You were named 2024 Women in Logistics. Like you were the Woman of the Year. That's pretty phenomenal.
That was cool.
And you've invited me to some of the logistics groups. I love how you guys get together. It's not just about attending conferences. It's also about spending time and building relationships and, the human element. But tell me about your group and more about it.
So Women in Logistics is actually like a broker carrier summit type organization. But basically at those summits, they have like little happy hours and get-togethers. But they do a lot more in that group as far as like having mentors and being able to lean on each other. Something that I developed with my friend Jenny was we call it Girls of Logistics because there's so many women in and whatever, but like girls trips. So we did we started last year. We have another one this year for girls trips, and it's basically people in logistics. It's not about work. We're not getting sponsored by anybody. This is kind of you investing in yourself. This isn't. I mean, I guess some people probably have their companies maybe paying for them, but most of the time it's like, no, I'm going on a girls, just like you're going with one of your girlfriends. But kind of the thought process is like you either don't know anybody or maybe you know one or two people. And kind of like whenever you're like in middle school, elementary school, you go to like a sleepover, a birthday sleepover, and you're like, oh, I only know the birthday girl, right? Like I don't know anybody else. I'm scared to go. And then you leave and everybody's your best friend. So that's kind of been the vibes, and what we're kind of going for is like building a network of people who get it. Like it's totally different being a mom or being just a female in the industry, and like how, it's a lot. There are more and more women coming into the industry, but a lot of them are the dispatchers or in accounting or something like that. I think seeing, maybe even meeting like one CEO and you're like, oh, she's just a girl like me. And like, I could do this, and kind of being able to see like there's more, and kind of learning from each other, I think is so important. So that's kind of where I guess my mission comes into play, and meeting other, fellow like women around. So
I love that. I've actually followed a lot of the women and connected with a lot of them that have been part of your groups and in your posts, and they're all very inspiring, and they all seem to have one thing in common, and that's supporting one another. It's like locking arms. It doesn't matter if you're new. If you're new, welcome. Like, come in. We want to meet you. We want to be, this isn't the mean girl. Back to the middle school comment. This isn't the mean girls group. It's like, no, we are together, and we want to welcome you in. We want to teach you. We want to mentor you. We want to help, give you a helping hand, and, bring you alongside of us. I love that because I organized a group called She Leads Securely, and we had our first annual summit this year. We have our second one planned for next year, but it's all about just encouraging women to be bold. Sometimes that means going before you're ready. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be perfect. I don't think anybody,
Right.
especially women, don't relate to perfection. We relate to real. So embracing our perfectly imperfect nature. And, you and I have both talked about how we're just kind of winging it. We're new to podcasting and, we're just kind of winging it and we're doing it. Maybe we're not perfect. Maybe we don't think we're ready, but we want to speak up. We want to be those women who are willing. Here I am, send me whatever that looks like, whoever I can help, whoever I can reach, I want to be a part of that. I want to encourage other women to do that.
Right.
And I want to just embrace being vulnerable and being seen doing things imperfectly.
Yeah.
I'm
100%.
learning as I go to. Yeah.
Oh, I'm totally winging it. And honestly, like I've only been on main stages and talking and even conferences for 3 years. And just the network that I've been able to build just because of just wanting to have friends, I guess, is one of the things. And going back to like your mean girl thing in middle school, I think all of us have had that experience where you've had those mean girls. Like I remember my middle school bully, and her name was Danielle too. And she was awful.
Oh,
but like,
gosh.
I think as becoming like an older, like the older you get, the more you're like, this isn't about like a clique, or it's not about this. Like genuinely, I think everybody, especially in the female part of the world, everybody's there to be like, I just want to be friends with everybody. That's kind of like our real goal, and be able to relate and be able to ask questions and not feel like scared to ask a question of like, how did you do this? Or why did you do this? Or how did you approach a situation? Or how did you ask for more money and with your position? Or how did you, like, something that I guess I take pride on myself was whenever I did switch roles originally, whenever I talked to GenLogs, because I was like, dude, I got to work for your company. This is so cool. This aligns with what I do, my, passion in life. And originally, Ryan, the CEO, was like, yeah, I mean, I got a sales gig. And I was like, I don't really want to do sales gig for sales gig. Like, I want a promotion. That's what I want. So I kind of held true to myself, and then eventually I did get a promotion, and then that's why I switched over. But I think the reason why I was able to even think like that, or to even believe in myself to do that, is because I had great women leaders out there that said, yeah, that's what I did, is I just held on and worked my butt off. And you're like, okay, I can do that. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And now you are the director of partnerships at GenLogs, right?
Yeah. I mean, not CEO status, but we'll get there one day. But yeah, being a director has been pretty cool. And like kind of being able to, the partnership side of it is like, I get to be friends with everybody and then talk tech and then, and like connect things. And then also being able to speak about stuff. Like, it's been so great, the role I'm in. So
one of the things I love that you do is you do talk tech, but the way you explain things, like, I'm not technical.
Oh,
and so you explain things in business terms where I'm able to understand them. And so my background is insurance. I was in insurance for over 20 years. And coming into cybersecurity, I thought, I don't talk tech. I'm not going to be good at this. But it's become my superpower, because most people that I talk to, my customers, are not cybersecurity people. They are business people. So for me to be able to understand cybersecurity and put it in business terms that they can understand, it's actually become a strength. And I see that in you too. I know that you're technical, and I'm learning the, logistics and trucking lingo. But when you talk, I understand what you're saying. That's why I wanted to have you on the show today, because I just find it so fascinating. I'm learning, and I want to learn, especially from other women.
Yeah.
And I think you do a really good job at that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I give kudos to my siblings. My siblings are wicked smart compared to me. And I remember always they would just be whatever in their own world. Like my brother was like, he would take something apart just to fix it. Like, just so smart. And so I remember growing up and being like, can you just dumb it down for, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then they would get so frustrated with me and be like, oh, what don't you understand? And so I always was like, just say it the way I would get it. And so I think that's probably the reason why I am the way I am. And whenever I do learn something, I'm like, and I always tell people, and that's the reason why I started the podcast. Like, I wanted to learn things, but like, I'm going to say, hey, will you dummy proof this? Cause I don't know what you're talking about. So I think a lot of people relate to that.
Because your podcast is called Tell Me Everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And who do you have on your show? Just like, are they all within logistics? Are they all within transportation? Like, tell me about your podcast.
Yeah, they are like all within supply chain. So kind of all walks of life.
Okay.
I originally started it because I went to Manifest and I walked in. I'm like, oh, I know all things about logistics. And I walked in, I'm like, wow, I don't know anything about warehousing. I know nothing about air freight. I know nothing about ocean freight. Like I was like, I don't know anything. And so it's kind of my way of being able to like ask all the questions, the dumb questions to all the smart people out there. Because usually you're like, hey, will you come on a podcast? People are like, yeah, okay. I'm like, cool. I get to bring them in and I get to forced to answer my questions. So that's typically that part. And then every Friday I do Fraud Girl Friday, which is kind of where I can be the expert instead of me asking expert stuff. And so I get to educate on all things cargo theft every Friday.
That's a great balance. That's
fun.
Great balance. Well, and where can people find your podcast?
It's on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts currently. And then honestly, like if you follow the LinkedIn page, it's probably where I put the most content on. But yeah, that's trying to build it. It's still super small and whatever, but I have fun. It's not there. I don't make any money off of it. I just have fun. So
yeah. No, I think it's great. And it goes back to just the awareness and the sharing the information and, bringing together people who might be competitors and, just collaborating and sharing information. How did you get breached? How was your freight stolen? That's part of what the Freight Fraud Prevention Hub is all about. It's bringing that to get information together collectively so that other companies can learn from that. I mean, as an industry, we're really one. We're one industry together. And so I think it's really important, just the mission of, sharing that information and, creating an environment where people aren't ashamed and they aren't embarrassed. I mean, it happens to everyone. And so on the company side, on the enterprise side, I always encourage companies to create a see something, say something environment where anytime something suspicious happens, even if you clicked on it, even if you engaged with it, even if you fell for it, the sooner that you say, hey, raise my hand, hey, something weird is happening here, the sooner I can isolate it, I can contain it, I can remediate it, I can investigate it. Right. And I think it's the same thing as an industry. We've got to create an industry where we're all feeling safe. We're not ashamed. We're not embarrassed. It's not, a scarlet letter on your chest or anything. It is happening, and the bad guys have teamed up against us, and we've got to be there, just as strong together as one industry.
Yeah. As far as the bad guys, teaming up against us 100%, like it's interesting talking to the FBI, they were saying like the Armenian gangs or the Singh gangs or whatever the different gangs, the cartel gangs, like they're actually working together. One will have a better strength in like, let's say cybersecurity. Then they sell that information to so-and-so, or they say, whenever you steal this load that I gave you, we split the profits. Like that is happening. So the fact that they're working together, why would we not work together? So I like to think of it instead of like us versus us, it's us versus them. And until we get a hold on this thing, like let's just work together. Cause like you said, it is happening to everybody. And I think because it's blown up so much, people have been more vulnerable to be like, yeah, me too. I mean, you'll watch the hands go up whenever I'm sure you're like this too. Whenever you ask the questions like who's been hit by this type of cargo theft or who's been hit by this type of cybersecurity. I mean, you're like ding, ding, ding. And you're like, oh, it's not just me. And you feel like less of a, I guess, dummy whenever that happens. Cause you're like, it is other people, but we can all learn from each other too.
Absolutely. And when you say that the criminal rings are working together, they absolutely are. Like one criminal gang is really good at breaching a system and doing reconnaissance work and gathering intel until it's valuable enough, and then they sell that to a second criminal gang who they're specialized in ransomware, so they drop the payload and then they take it from there. Yep. So it is wild how the different gangs, even it's a business. It is the criminal business model has been commoditized. It is absolutely, they run it like a business.
Yeah, I mean, think about it with like whenever you watch the movies on like the drug market, it is literally copy and paste when it comes to cargo theft. Like I think that's something that people don't understand is how organized it is. It's like watch the movies when it comes to any type of drug ring that you watch. It's the same. They're implementing the same things, and a lot of times they are the same criminals that are doing drug muling and drug trafficking and stuff. Because a lot of times whenever they actually catch these guys, they're either human trafficking, like they'll find humans within the containers that they're shipping, or drugs. But they're not just like, I woke up being like, I want to steal freight. They're like, I do all sorts of other bad things. So it's not just when you don't report something, you're also probably hurting. Who knows what you're hurting on the back end, and who knows who could be affected as a human. Like I was saying, like those drivers being held hostage. Maybe you're the one who makes a report that they can find the guys that saves X amount of people. Like you just never know. It's so important to report it.
That's such a good point. The reporting, not reporting is a decision to participate in it.
For sure. I
Yeah.
totally agree.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh, this has been a fascinating conversation. Is there anything that you would leave listeners with? Just any final points?
Final
Any
point
words
would
of
be
wisdom?
I don't know if I have any wisdom, but I will say, I guess final point is continue to educate and continue to change what you're doing. Like just because you come up with this brilliant model on how to protect yourself today doesn't mean it's even relevant in 6 months. So I think continuing to listen to shows like ours where you're learning about things and then adjusting as things change, because those bad guys, they're preying on you. So if they're like, oh yeah, I couldn't pressure test on this one, but 6 months later I tried a different tactic and I was able to get in. I promise you're ending up on a list somewhere. So I guess that's my biggest thing to the industry is continue to educate and continue to evolve.
I would agree with you. The cyber landscape is changing so fast. And, with the advent of AI, the attacks are coming. They're so hard to detect. They're so realistic. You really do have to keep learning. I agree with you. I'm so thankful that you were able to come on the show and talk today. I hope that we can do it again.
Yeah.
Tell listeners how they can get in touch with you, how they can book a demo of GenLogs. How do we get to you?
All the things. So LinkedIn's probably the best way to get in touch with me, Danielle Spinelli. GenLogs, go to genlogs.io. Like I said, even if you don't want to see a demo, but you do have a cargo theft, put that report in. And then if you want to learn more once we find your freight, hopefully that happens, then you can always take a demo then too. But just really LinkedIn, I guess, is probably the easiest way. I know it's kind of cliche, but yeah.
I'm the same. And then your podcast is on YouTube, Spotify, Apple.
Yep.
Yeah, we definitely want people tuning in there too.
Yeah. Tell Me Everything. And I think there's other Tell Me Everything. So sometimes you have to also search my name. Hopefully one day the algorithm will put me at the top, but we'll see.
Yes. You're right. Because when I searched for you, I'm like, there's a lot of Tell Me Everythings here. And I went through, I was intentional. You had sent me some really good links of shows. I enjoyed watching them and I've got, even more of them to watch. So
love it.
I appreciate that. Yes. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you found value in this, please like, share, comment. If you enjoyed it, your listeners probably will too. Rank us on Apple, Spotify, and all the places, and tune in again next week.